Hi, this is Mike Rankin with Relational Intelligence, and I have here with me today Ann Rankin. Welcome, Ann.
Thank you.
Or Annie, as we always call you. Yeah, thank you. And I wanted to have you in today to talk about a few things, but first of all, congratulations on your recent graduation.
Thank you.
So, University of Michigan, psychology major. Mm-hmm. And I wanted to kind of peel back the layers of the onion a little bit and then also talk about the actual commencement itself, which was fantastic. But so share with me, kind of coming out of high school and getting into college, that first year or two when you had to kind of decide on a major. How did you pick psychology?
I'll be honest. When I picked my major, I wasn't as passionate about it as I am, I would say, today. Mm-hmm. I picked it. I think I got advice from you and advice from Mom. Mom and I had always talked about we're similar in the way where our emotional intelligence is our strong suit and the rest kind of follows. And then you gave me some pretty good advice of kind of, you were thinking back to when you were in college and you didn't really know what direction you wanted to go, and maybe you had received this advice, but really just to lead with kind of what you care about, and the rest will come naturally. Mm-hmm. And psychology it really did interest me. I thought, understanding people as well as yourself on a deeper level made so much sense.
Right. Like, can't be a bad skill set to have, right?
Why would not that nothing else matters, but if I was going to put 4 years of energy and your money into something valuable, I wanted it to be psychology, I guess. And my first 3 years of college, I played water polo, obviously, as you know. And so I went through a transition my junior year and ended up not playing my senior year, which kind of opened up all of these doors of motivation and time and passion, really, for what I was studying and where I wanted to take that post-undergrad. And so that's kind of where I'm at now.
Yeah, it's amazing thinking about that journey. But I do remember, and I'm not sure if it was the particular advice that I gave you there, but the idea that, that we all have it figured out. Just, there are some people who know straight off the bat what they want to do, and others that say, so many people say follow your passion, and that's great, but like you just articulated, sometimes you don't know that it's a passion. So I say, my advice is follow what slightly interests you, right? And totally. And sometimes when you pull that thread, beautiful things happen. So are there any, points along that journey? And again, I think you're right, that transition from the junior year to the senior year with the retirement from water polo, which, by the way, if anybody has a youth in high school sports and getting ready to play collegiate sports, when that athlete decides to no longer play, they're not quitting, they're retiring. In Annie's case, it was a medical retirement, but still. And so I think the athletes, you guys are trained to do, mind over matter and go through unbelievable amounts of pain. And sometimes it's hard to get your brain to say, hey, it's okay to retire, know. But I think, listening to you, that what a gift that was in the senior year.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I don't ever want to take too much credit for the process that it was for me personally, because my injury kept me one foot in the door for a decent amount of time. So I had, whether I knew it or not, 6+ months to
transition,
figure my life out without the reality of, oh, this is over. Right. You're done with this. Right. This thing that has essentially controlled your life for however many years is no longer at the forefront of your to-do list. And
there's also an identity reformation that has to happen, right?
I will say the identity, so I guess I will take a little credit for my transition, because I was lucky enough to to not really struggle with the identity piece of it, because in high school and the 3 years I played in college, I never allowed it to be my identity. I was very proud of the fact that I was a human who happened to play a sport, whereas I looked around and saw everyone who labeled themselves and viewed themselves and worthed themselves on their sport.
Yeah.
And that felt incredibly dangerous to me, knowing that it was so temporary.
Right.
And that concept of, I think, change and impermanence, which is something that I try and keep at the forefront of my mind at all times, that helped with identity, I mean, more than I can ever explain.
Yeah.
I didn't feel like I was losing a part of me. I didn't feel like, well, like, who am I if I'm not this starter on the 1-2 side? Or
Right.
what am I going to do with my time? I knew I had so much more to bring to the table. This was an experience that began at one point and it ended. And that's what birth and death is.
Right.
That's what college is. That's what any chapter or phase of life is. And it was just, it's another, time to learn and grow.
When you said change and impermanence, it reminded me, you supplied me with a quote, I think a few passages actually, when my dad, Grandpa Lee, passed away last year, about change and impermanence. So share with me, where did you first discover those concepts? Obviously, they're not new. Where did you discover those concepts, and how have you kind of folded them into your life?
I want to say either end of junior year or beginning of senior year of high school. I don't know what prompted. I truly, when I think back to it, I truly feel like I woke up one day and thought about my life. I had never really been like reflective, or I feel like the past few years prior to that moment, I mean, I didn't really practice gratitude. I didn't treat people amazingly. I didn't acknowledge the power that, the energy that you can bring to people.
Sure, right.
And I have no idea what in me sparked that, but somehow it did. And I assessed so many different areas of my life, mainly how I spent my time. And that prompted me to reassess what things I was adding into my daily routine.
Yep.
And from there, I decided, what do I want to take out of that, and what do I want to add into that? Something I took out of that was social media.
Yep.
Something I added
And
into that.
how old were you because I remember was that like sophomore year of high school? Or
No, this was, I want to say, there was I would say there was like a weaning point where I had deleted it, but I was
Instagram?
Instagram mainly.
Right.
I never had Twitter. Facebook wasn't really a thing. Snapchat is very heavily used for communication, so I admit I still
you can't not do that. Right?
You can. It's
very hard.
It's not hard. It's just a decision you have to make. I haven't had Snapchat, I want to say, in maybe 4 months, but sometimes I'll add that back.
Yep.
But so I want to say, I believe my final cutoff from Instagram to where I didn't download it ever again was maybe the first month of senior year of high school.
Right. Okay.
I think a little bit before then, I deleted it, but maybe would repost or re-download it to like post or something.
Right.
I still had that attachment to where I wanted to, I still cared.
Right.
And I will say that is one of, I mean, I don't even know if I knew it at the time. I'm so used to it now too, but I think that is kind of a lifeline for me. Or just keeps me, I mean, it just keeps me so grounded. It's not.
Meaning not have the absence of it, not having that constant.
Yeah, but
influx.
I guess, to kind of get back to your original question, something that I really added into my time was reading. And I had never, I think when I was little, that could have been one of me and Mom's biggest fights is, I hate reading all of that. And so I would say I got back into it on my own in high school. And I adore fiction. I think it's such an incredible way to practice empathy. That's truly why I love reading, because you are able to look at the world through somebody else's eyes. I think that's something that we should always be practicing. But I also stumbled upon, in like maybe religion and spirituality or something, a little pocket mindfulness book by the monk Thich Nhat Hanh. And I still go to Barnes and Noble and search out his literature. And I remember like reading chapters of that book, and it makes me emotional. I looked up and saw the world differently.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's the beauty of knowledge, right? And the beauty of expanding your mind and your horizons. And I think now, having had the experience where in your senior year you had much more time, to devote to those pursuits, and now into your next chapter, it's hard to draw up a better playbook, which is fantastic. One of the things I wanted to kind of visit with you on was the actual commencement ceremony, and I've actually mentioned it to a few different people. Wynton Marsalis, who's the great jazz musician and trumpeter, did the keynote, and we're going to look at that in a second. But the other that I thought was interesting was Nestor, and I don't recall his last name. I will have to pull it up. But he's the head of psychology department for University of Michigan, and his commencement speech for the actual school was so powerful to me, and his basic message, he got up there and said, this is a speech about failure, right? And he went through and cataloged how he had tried and failed in his life, and the message was really about in the trying, and I thought it was so remarkable. I generally, being a Gen Xer and skeptical about everything, I'm not a big fan of graduation ceremonies and all of that business. But I'll tell you, those two keynotes were just phenomenal for me to listen to. And so I wanted to delve into the subject of AI, and especially for your generation, coming off of COVID, where we have a lot of emerging mental health issues, and just a lot of change, constant change going through the society. And so I wanted to talk to you a little bit about that. But I want to hear the clip from Wynton Marsalis in the graduation first, and let me just get that started here, and then we'll come back.
In this time of technology as demigod, second only to money, on the cusp of ubiquitous AI technology that promises everything from writing epical masterpieces to going to the bathroom for you, some, confusing information with knowledge, are already prepared to rethink the value of education itself. If the computer works and thinks for you, why, you can really live a life of absolute leisure, goes the reasoning. Don't be fooled, graduates. Because you have the recipe, it don't mean you can cook the meal. At some point, a person has to show you how to breathe life into those instructions. And eventually, you may transcend the recipe with the power of your own creative imagination and your own unique brand of feeling, but that's not necessarily a given. May you never lose your sense of taste to the degree that you would choose prepackaged, nutritionless, over-preserved food products to a down-home meal prepared with skill, love, and interest in your well-being.
I absolutely love the speech itself is 15 minutes long, and I suggest for anybody intrigued by just that there to go look it up. But a few things that really resonate with me is, don't be fooled, graduates, and I feel like that in our family has been, we have to be our own independent thinkers. This is a TV commercial that's saying this, or this is a news station that's saying that. We have to be able to synthesize the information and to be able to think for ourselves. And what really inspires me about not only his speech, but that particular clip is talking about AI and what AI can do for us all. And, we hear some people talk about, well, what do you need education for if it can simply write the essay for you, or it can write the blog post or whatever. And from my perspective, I think that means that we need more education than ever so that we can, determine what path that we want. And so I guess my question to you is, and from your perspective, really, how do you and your peers, kind of feel about this time when you're coming out into the workforce or going to grad school with the introduction of AI, or do you guys, other than the process of using it, do you talk about that, what it means for the future?
I will say I don't think, and maybe this is just me and my close circle of friends, but I never used ChatGPT. I know some of my roommates used it for assignments and whatnot. But I will say, from coming home and observing kind of you and Mom and maybe your age group, it feels like it's a much more prevalent topic of conversation for you. And much more anxiety inducing for you.
Yeah.
And maybe that's because we were born into the world of technology, I'm sure.
That's a very interesting point. You're right, because I know when it first came out, I've come to, whether I've talked myself into it or not, I don't know, but I've come to the optimistic side of it, which we were talking about, I think, just last night at dinner, which is that we actually, in our labor force, we've got the smallest labor force in the U.S. that we've had since World War II, right? And so we are actually constrained in our economy by labor shortage. And so I think that these tools will actually help us get the work done that we need to get done. So that's where I've kind of come mentally. But I do agree with you. I think it causes a lot of consternation in our peer group. And I had never thought of it that way. That you guys from the get-go were born into the world of technology. So it's not, maybe it doesn't pose as great of a fear.
I mean, when I kind of hear about it and hear you guys talking about it, or even just learning about it as a new kind of
tool or system or whatever.
I'm kind of like, I'm sure that's what they're making now. I'd be surprised if that isn't the direction it's going.
Right.
Whether that's a good thing or a bad thing, I don't know, but I think it's hard to maintain kind of a larger perspective of, like, I kind of said it last night, but this is nothing new. This it looks different. It's
right. But there's always
in the
something
form
around
of
the
AI,
corner.
but
Right.
like that's what happens. And I can't really speak to a macro level because I'm not sure how this will affect the job market and all.
Right.
Those things are going to change, and that's, I'm sure, going to affect a vast amount of people positively and a vast amount of people negatively.
Right.
But that is what evolution.
It's called the human condition. Yeah, right.
Yeah, but I will say on a micro level, and this is what I take from his speech, is like, take pride in your independence. And I understand that they target us and the algorithm, and they know how to manipulate our brain to click on that ad, or you name it.
They being big tech.
Exactly.
Yeah, right. Yep.
But I mean, have a little more respect for yourself.
Right.
Okay, okay, if you're able to say that and recognize that,
we know what the machine's doing.
Yeah,
react.
I mean, I feel like I hear people just talking in circles about it.
Mm-hmm.
So delete the app, or give yourself 30 minutes to watch the news that day, and take in whatever information you feel you need to know.
Yep.
Which you probably don't. I mean,
right.
And just be with yourself and your family around you. The rest, you don't need. It's because we're consume everything all day long.
Yeah.
Like, you've given them the power, take it back.
Yeah.
You don't need. It's not another limb. Like, leave your phone in the room. Like, sorry, I'm saying like you.
That's okay.
Maybe I'm undermining the whole thing, but to me, it's simple.
Right. It's so easy, it's difficult.
Yeah.
Right, for people,
I think we give the phones way too much credit.
Yeah.
And it is, I mean.
Well, I think they are engineered to be, radically addictive.
Absolutely, but. But we know that.
So
and
is
yet
alcohol, so is cigarettes. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And with that knowledge, why don't we do something with that knowledge? So change the way that you interact with it.
Yep. That's very smart. So tell me about, like, kind of on that, taking that same thread, but like, thinking about who you want to help in the future. So if you go to grad school and become a marriage and family therapist, that's next step for you. Yep.
I'll have a license in marriage and family therapy. I don't necessarily want to work with couples or families. I'm sure I will, but I think with that license, I'll be able to, as I go through grad school, figure out who my demographic will be, what my strengths are in helping people, what kind of strategies I want to use. Yeah.
And if you, I know it's a journey and a process, but like if you just had to, like we were talking about before, follow that intuition, where does that sort of potentially lead you, do you think?
I know that I want to work with young adults. I think we are old enough to, if you get to a place where you're sitting in a chair, you want to be there and you're putting the effort in yourself. Yeah. And you are still moldable and open-minded. You're not set in your ways yet. And you're hopefully eager to learn and change and be inspired. And you're not too young to where your mom's making you do this because she's worried, or
right.
You name it. And I think this, for me, I look around and it's really interesting to see how people deal with this transitional phase that I'm currently going through. A lot of my friends, I hear comments as we're kind of graduating college, I'm going to be so depressed when I get home. Or, oh my God, I don't even know like what I want to do. And
you're kind of shot out of a cannon. I've said to many recent graduates, I actually think that this is one of the more challenging times. Absolutely. Because, when you're in high school, you're living with your folks and you're trying to get into college if that's your goal. And then when you're in college, you're absorbing that whole experience, but you've got classes in your day and your week and your month is kind of laid out for you on the cadence of the semester or the quarter or whatever. And then, boom.
Yeah, and it also is the first time you don't have a start and an end date.
Yes.
If you're going into the workforce, you're like, okay.
I guess this is it.
You don't have little milestones. All right, got to get to Christmas break, got to get to summer. It's so vast and so unknown. And that is so naturally anxiety inducing and scary and can kind of back you into a corner or a rut and make you not excited about life.
Right.
And almost dread whatever is to come.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't think that it has to be that way. And I think that if you have somebody in your corner helping you not go in that direction or perceive the future in that way, and you have somebody helping you find the tools that work for you to kind of nudge you in this direction of, no, look at how beautifully exciting this time is. These next few years, you get to choose your family, your career, where you live.
Right.
I mean, and I will say, for me, I'm blessed to where I have 2 loving and supportive parents who allow me to come back home, and we have the financial.
At a price.
Yeah, well, I am paying rent. But we do have. I have been given a life to where I don't really have additional stressors, which is, I do not take that for granted for a second.
Yeah.
And I understand that people in different situations have, all right, they can't go home and figure it out because they need
Right.
food on the table and a
Yep.
roof over their head.
Yep.
So I do
Or
understand.
home is full of chaos and they
Absolutely,
can't
they
thrive
don't want to
there.
go home
Right.
if it's an abusive household
Yep.
or whatever. So I know that varies and that looks different, but I think that you can still do something to kind of help yourself through that, and it doesn't have to be this doomsday. I
Yeah.
peak college; it never gets better than college.
Right.
I think looking at it in a different way, and I think that's hard to do.
Yeah.
And it's more than just looking at it in a certain way. It's, I don't know, I just think that this period of time can go one of 2 ways.
Yeah.
And I want to help people
Thrive in that.
design their lives
Right.
exactly how they want it to be,
Yep.
and quiet the noise of what they think it should be, or help them relieve stress that kind of feel you can make things in your head so, and your body is physically reacting to it. You can
absolutely.
just
I've gone through some of that myself.
absolutely, and that's so real. And yeah, but I think that I want to help people see life in the amazing, beautiful way that they can.
Well, there's a few, that's beautiful. So a few things that come to mind. One is listening to you there, you speak with some great images, just your word choice, and it's very relatable, is one. The other, I think for someone in that position, if they're perhaps overwhelmed, don't overthink the 10-year picture, because sometimes it's so overwhelming. What's literally the 2-year and the 6-month? What can you do over a 6-month period that will help get you there? Because I believe, and it's, I think, widely known that, right, where you are today, you can only see so far. But if you go to this next step and it's 10 feet up, you can see a little bit further. And life is often, I really didn't know what I wanted to do coming out of school. And then in my first job, I learned that I really enjoyed the business. I enjoyed, talking to people and learning new things and all of those. So those are all kind of soft skills around it. And so I think to the extent that people can do that, for in 6-month sprints with a 2-year plan, kind of at least it does put some of those bookends or those milestones, I guess, as you called it earlier, into play that I think kind of help because when it's so open, I think the human mind it's like choice overload. People just kind of shut down a little bit. So, so any advice to either incoming freshmen to college or graduating seniors about kind of how to? I mean, we've already touched on some of it, but maybe little kernels of wisdom that you might give to somebody as a mentor coming into the situation that you just progressed through?
I would say, I think, graduating high school, you're coming from a time of maybe having your parents helping you, kind of leading you, or maybe it's a coach or a teacher. You know, it feels like you're kind of following in a direction.
Right.
And then you graduate high school and that's taken away and you're kind of looking for what do I follow? Like, what's my compass?
Right.
And there's so many things that might feel like a compass or disguise themselves as a compass.
Interesting.
And it's very loud and there's so much pressure and so many
It's hard
things.
to discern probably for yourself, yeah.
Right. And I would say to that point, my advice would be your compass is your gut and your intuition, which is a cliche and possibly obvious, but
Also darn true.
I think, right. I think we get a little confused and we think it's hard to follow our gut and our intuition. I don't think the difficult part is following your gut and your intuition. I think that it's quieting the distractions.
To actually listen and feel it.
We all have it. That's a fact. But it's not necessarily even like finding it, because we can sift through things and find it, but it's really truly like being able to eliminate the other
Right.
things
To
that are
squelch
distracting.
the other noise, yeah.
So I think that's such a productive place to put your energy.
Yeah.
Not necessarily trying to find or like search for
Right.
externally
Right.
your
No, that's
intuition,
really good.
but what's distracting me from
Right.
it?
Quieting down the
people,
noise so
or
you can listen.
maybe even it's your parents who are nudging you to go to, the business, whatever,
Right.
but you think it's just quiet it all down, eliminate,
Yeah.
delete something maybe. But that's really hard, and it takes spending a lot of time with yourself.
Right.
Looking in. That can be painful for some people. That can be, I do not want to do that for some people, not
Right.
even willing. I mean, that's just too much. And I understand that. It is really hard, but
That probably means there's also other work to be done to get there. Right?
Exactly.
Ultimately.
and that might look like a few months of inflection for some people. That might look like a lifetime of healing for some people, but your answers and your path can only come from your heart.
Yeah.
And so however that might take you a long time, if you decide to, listen to the other things disguising themselves as your compass, those are the people that have the midlife crisis, because
Yes.
then 20 years into their career that they didn't realize
That didn't
isn't their
really want-
purpose.
Right.
Okay, then, so you may as well have your midlife crisis right now
Right.
and avoid all that.
Right.
Then
Yeah.
shove it down, shove it down, shove it down.
Yep.
I'm just going to do this. It's going to come back to bite you, and
Yep.
yeah.
Yep. Yeah, for sure.
So
And-
take the time right now to know yourself and listen, quiet everything out, and you will know exactly where you need to be.
That is fantastic advice. I know in high school, obviously we're different generations. My mother purchased for me a book called Writing Down the Bones. And I think I only made it through the first chapter, but the first chapter was about free writing. And I forget the author's name, but her recommendation was go get an unlined notebook, just blank pages, and just start writing. Don't do any correction, any self-correction, grammar, punctuation, just get it down. And what you will find is when you start, there will be a point at which a fearful thought comes up and your brain wants to shut it off and not put it down on the paper. And it's about getting through that and getting it out onto the paper. And I have used that. I don't journal regularly, but when I feel like there's a crossroads in life and I need to really decide, like, okay, what am I going to do here? I will pick up a journal. and I'll pick it up for a month or two, and then I put it down, and I pick it up and read it again, and it's so clear.
Yeah, well, that's the same. All of your worries and your true thoughts and instincts, they're all living inside of you.
Mm-hmm.
So if you take the time to tend to them,
Yep.
those are your answers.
Right.
You don't need to look to anyone or
Right.
anything to find them. They're
Right.
in you.
Right.
If you
Just have to allow them to bubble up
Exactly.
and be
That's
able
the
to
same-
contemplate them.
Yeah,
right?
I would give that free writing exercise as
Mm-hmm.
a comparison to meditation. When you're sitting and you're focusing on your breath, the thing that's bothering you that you didn't even know was bothering you is going to come up, and you're going
Right.
to feel tightening in your chest, and you're like,
Yep.
oh my God,
Mm-hmm.
that conflict with this person the other day, that really hurt me. And,
Mm-hmm.
or, maybe it's something more shallow than that. Maybe it's a trauma from 10 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
But all of your answers are living inside of you, and if you give yourself the outlet or the practice to see them and to be there for them, you heal it.
Yeah. Oh, well, Annie, thank you so much. As we close, I want to bring up one memory, which when you were talking about quieting down, I used the word squelch, which if you may remember on the VHF radio, there's the squelch button, which then made me think of the VHF class that we took down at OCC Sailing Center.
Oh, pon, pon, pon. That was funny.
And securite.
Yeah.
Well, Annie, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it.
Yeah.
And really excited to see where you go with this next chapter.
Of course. Thank you.
Congratulations.
Thank you.